I have a lot of dresses and I'm not going anywhere, so gotta wear them when I can. Heyo, it's Oishi, welcome back. So I'm building a world right now for reasons, and I wanted to talk a little bit about world building because it is so crazy and there's a lot of things to think about, and I just want to talk through my thought process and just how once you get in, it's hard to get out. It's kind of like a cult in that way. So first thing that happens is that you got an idea. You have an idea, a concept, a premise, if you will, and your story is really cool, which, I mean, if you're me, you kind of go back and forth between thinking that your story is, like, kind of cool and being excited for it, but then also really hating it and thinking that it's the worst thing in the world that anybody has ever thought of. But your story's cool, and so it warrants a really cool world for it to live in. I came up with my idea quite a while ago. I don't even know really how long it's been, but I started writing it casually because I didn't want to get too far into my head and thinking about all the logistics. I just wanted to write because it felt good to not really think too hard about it. But eventually I got to a point where not knowing every single detail of the story was giving me so much anxiety, so I thought, you know, it's finally time to plot this thing out and make sure I know actually what's going on. Namely, it's time to really get down to the nitty-gritty of world building. So how do you start world building? Well, for me, I kind of just come up with countries. Obviously, some of it is naturally made. Like, when you come up with an idea, you probably come up with characters too, and they have to live somewhere, so that's usually a good place to start. I had 3 countries which I knew were going to be a part of this world. The country which all of my characters live in, and the one that is kind of the central area of the plot. The second country, which is the country that bounces off the first country for ways and reasons. What am I saying? Then a third country, which is the least integral to the story, but it still needs to be there for reasons. I mean, you could say that about anything, I guess. I had the ideas of these countries plotted out in my head, but I had no idea where they actually were, or, you know, what they were surrounded by, what were their geographical, like, relationships to each other, and also I knew that the world that I'm building is not only going to have these 3 countries, so I need more things happening. So it's at this point that I grabbed a piece of paper and I got to drawing. I don't know how well you can see that. I don't really want to show you too closely because I don't want to give away my world completely, but yeah, this is what I drew. So I had my 3 main countries, they're in this vicinity, and then I had the other 2 countries that I knew had to be a thing, but I hadn't given too much thought to, and they're in that vicinity. And then I also made a little territory, like, in between them, that I had no idea I was going to include, but then suddenly I was drawing them, and I was like, okay, I guess this is a part of my world now. The countries and civilizations that I have are inspired in part by some real-world countries and civilizations, so a level of research is warranted there. But now that I have a map, there was more to consider that has to do with geography. You'd think that it wouldn't be that difficult, because, you know, geography is like the most basic level of world building, but the more you get into it, the more there is to consider. Obviously, you're gonna have cities and your metropolises and towns, villages, things like that, so those are pretty easy enough to figure out and fun enough to do. You just, like, choose a spot and go, there, that's the capital city, and then draw it. But there's so much more to geography than just the cities. Like, there's different kinds of landscapes, and as soon as you start thinking about different kinds of landscapes, it's like, why did I suddenly forget everything there is to know about land? Mountains? Those exist. And, like, that's it. There's also lakes, and there's volcanoes, there's caves, there's valleys, and it's not like all of this is just for one country, because there's 3. There's 3 that I have to figure out where these mountains are, where these valleys are, where are the lakes, where are the caves. Also, because of all the geographical obstacles in my way, I had to, like, move around my countries and towns a number of times because I realized my mountains were blocking them from a specific thing, and I was like, well, they can't really go over the mountains, or at least it would be difficult. So then I had to, like, move my mountain range. Coming up with names for things is super fun, but it's also really stupid, at least the way that I do it. Once again, because my countries are inspired by certain real life cultures and civilizations, I wanted the names to have sounds and, you know, structures that would be from those places. So what I did is I pulled up Google Translate, I pull up the languages of the places that I am taking inspiration from, and then I type in, like, whatever feeling or vibe that I'm going for with this very specific thing that I'm naming, or, like, what meaning do I really want it to have. I look at the translation, I move around some letters, sometimes I combine different parts of the words from different languages together, and then boom, you've got names for things. It's a really, really scientific process that takes a lot of time and energy to perfect. Google Translate has never seen this much business from one person. So now that I have countries, and, you know, a general idea of what the geography of it looks like, You gotta think about the people. Because people live in your country, so what are the demographics? Who the hell lives in the country? That's the big question. Because as much as the land itself matters, it's the people inside those lands that matter more. Who is the majority? Who's the minority? Why are they the minority? What are the ethnic groups? Do you have sub-ethnic groups? Are there immigrants? And if so, why? Was there a mass immigration? Or was it just like over the years trickles of immigrants coming in? And like, if so, why? If there was a mass immigration, what caused that mass immigration? And if there was just little trickles, why are people coming to this land? What are they going to find here? What is the breakdown of the demographics percentage by percentage? I need to know that because that is very important information apparently. And like, are there very specific areas within your country that is like immigrant central? What are the demographics of each of the different cities and towns that I've made up? Is the capital city mostly the majority? Are there towns on the outskirts mostly like immigrants? Or is it like the opposite, because did people from other countries move to the capital city to find work? If they are immigrants, what kind of work are they looking for? Like, what are they doing? What is the distribution, essentially? It's just, there's so much to consider. And I'm gonna be saying that a lot because it's true. And if we are talking about all of this stuff, like things like immigration and ethnic groups, minorities and majorities, all of it ties into the history of the world and this country and like how things came to be. Speaking of, history is both fun but also really stressful because you have to make up stuff that would make sense and is not just like out of the blue. I have a history for my main country. I have a badly drawn timeline. This is my badly drawn timeline. Everything that happens, I wrote out on the top in the different like chunks of time. It could be more detailed, which I probably will be making it more detailed, but this is what I have so far. I don't have a history for my second country yet that is separate from my main country because their histories intertwine in certain ways, namely war. But the third country, arguably the country that has the least importance to this story, at least in the first installment, my goodness, installments. That country I have so much history for, and it's like written down and everything. It's not proper English yet, it's a lot of notes and like lowercase and stuff like that, but I have a history and it exists on a page. And its geography is pretty well developed as well. I don't know why I just decided to develop that one country that literally does not have even a big role in this story that I'm trying to tell. So when you're thinking about history, again, there's so many questions to ask. Who invaded who? And why? And like, what are the governments like? How have they treated their civilians? How have they changed? You know, who had dictatorships? Who had revolutions? Evil kings, saviors, changes of power, changes of government, land and border disputes. What came from those disputes and like things like if something did have a revolution, because I'm going to write a previous revolution that happened, what happened after that, like what happened to the people, what happened to the fabric of the country itself, how did that change things? Is history going to repeat itself, and if it does, in what ways are going to be different? I do have a history, like I said, for my main country, and I just need to take it all out of here and dump it onto a paper so that I can actually see it and not have to keep fishing through whatever the hell is in here looking for it. But there's more, because history obviously has a huge hand in those things like government and things like that, but it also inspires culture. I have none of it yet. My main country has a number of cultural elements that I have ideas for, but again, I just have not fleshed out because I love coming up with ideas and then doing nothing with them. Don't take a shot every time I say that I have something, but I have not fleshed it out, because I think you will die. For my other countries, literally nothing. I have no culture. Culture does not exist. But some questions to consider for culture, like the way of life. What is their way of life, and what makes that their way of life? What historical elements feed into it? Is there, you know, what kinds of music, dancing, clothing, customs, traditions, values? What aspects were absorbed from other cultures as immigrants came in and out? And like, why were those specific aspects absorbed? And which like elements of the culture was lost throughout the years, and why? And again, all of the culture stuff, and you know, technically all of the history, like everything I'm talking about in this video, all of it is going to be different for each of my three countries. So I have to do it once, and then I have to do it again, and then I have to do it again, and then I have to make sure that the three things that I made up all make sense with each other in this world. The third country, again, is the one that I know the most about for my culture, which, you know, it's the least relevant, so that's fun. And I know that some of their traditions and celebrations that they have, they're going to be linked to like religious stuff that they do, and oh my god, we need to come up with religions. Religions. Okay, so I have one religion for my third country, because of course I do, and I have the beginnings of, like, not a religion exactly, but people believe in the power of this one real being that used to exist a long time ago, and I just came up with that like a couple of days ago. It did not exist in my brain before that, but I was like, hey, what if I added this thing? and then I did. Once again, the second country, nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. My poor second country is getting so neglected like a middle child. Things to think about when coming up with religions. Monotheism, polytheism, majority religions, minority religions, freedom to practice. Are there some people that are just like spiritual? Is there just spiritual aspects of it and not just like fully religious? What are the religions founded on? What are their core values? Like, is it goodness? Is it nature? What do we worship? Gods, deities, saints? Also, like, where did they come from? Because religions don't just pop up out of nowhere. They have to come from somewhere, from some sort of ideology. So, like, what happened in the far, far history of my world that led to the creations of these religions? And all that goes back to history. Countries have economies. So, like, how do economies work? I am literally a future business student. I can't believe I just said that sentence. No, you know what? I can, because how do economies work? Resources, like natural resources. So I have to figure out what are the natural resources for in each of my 3 countries, and why do other countries need them? But then what else? Because there are more things to economy than just natural resources. Like, what are their major imports and exports, and who are their major trading partners? I need a percentage breakdown on, like, annual imports and exports. And the calendar. The calendar! What does their year look like? Is it going to be 12 months? Which is the same as ours, or are we going to be, 13, 14 months? Are we going to do less months? What does their fiscal year look like? And, like, taxes. Like, oh my god, how are taxes going to work? Who is going to be taxed? Should we tax the rich? Should we tax the poor? What does it look like? Do we have accountants? I don't know. We're not going to get into that. Oh my goodness. What else fuels economies? Tourism. That's a thing. Are there tourist attractions? How are people touring? Also, how does wartime affect the economy? And, like, economic collapse? Has that happened? I mean, it's got to have happened, because if the world has existed for this long, there has had to have been some sort of economic collapse in the past. Is there going to be economic collapse in the future? Because we are in wartime. I mean, doesn't war, like, kind of fuel the economy sometimes because they're making a whole bunch of stuff? I'm really just showing how dumb I am. And if it is wartime, and wartime does affect our economy and, like, our trading stuff, because we're not going to be trading with our country that we're at war with, right? So how are we going to get the resources from that country that we need? Are we trading anyway? Black markets? Gangs? Gangs? Anonymous suppliers? I don't know, man. And if we're talking about war, so the trading partners that we have shows a little bit of the state of our international relations, right? But like, what else is there? Which countries are like ride or dies for each other, best friends, buds, with you to the very end, and which ones will have each other's backs occasionally, just be like, we're friendly enough, and which ones just straight out hate each other? I mean, obviously the countries that are at war probably hate each other a lot, but is there any other animosity between countries? And if so, why? What sparked the animosity? Why has it persisted for this long? Or is it new animosity? And if so, why is it new animosity? What is going on? Oh my god, politics. I didn't even talk about politics. In my notes, I don't even have a section for politics. I guess I can put that into here. What is the political state other than the war, obviously? Like, who is helping this war effort? Which countries are, like, right there beside us, giving us weapons, giving us food, giving us chances at actually winning this thing? Who is enabling this war? Which countries are profiting off of this war? And, like, how? Because I know that's a thing, right? But how? Which countries have treaties and agreements and, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Mutually assured destruction. Is that a thing? Look, I know that I'm probably gonna think about more stuff as soon as I stop recording. Like, I literally just thought about politics as I was recording this. It was a thing that already existed in my head, but I hadn't actually written it down. Anyway, I know that there's probably a lot more to think about. Magic. I didn't even talk about magic. No, okay. Magic systems warrant a whole other video on their own, and frankly, I do not have the time. Okay, I'm tired. We're not doing this. But I'm gonna stop here because I think we're far enough down this rabbit hole. I think the moral of the story is that world building is quite a ride, but it's also egregiously stressful and single-handedly raises my blood pressure. I'm gonna keep world building. We'll see just how far I get into this and how much it makes me want to cry. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below, let me know how far you've gone down this world building rabbit hole, and if you've managed to find your way back up to the surface. If you enjoy this sort of stuff and you want to see more of it from me, please make sure to hit that subscribe button because I make new videos every Friday, or at least I try. I'm also on platforms, so if you want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Letterboxd, those links will be in the description down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!